We want to welcome Derek Taylor from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, to the podcast. We have Derek on here just because you mentioned that your rental had flooded. Was it something where a pipe had burst, or was it like more of a natural causes for the flooding, or what had happened?
It was a natural disaster. It was the worst flood that Cedar Rapids had ever seen. The previous record that Cedar Rapids had ever seen was like 20 feet on the Cedar River that runs through the city.
Hmm.
And it that year in 2008, it broke that record at 30, just over 31 feet.
Wow.
I think something like 10 square miles of the entire city was flooded.
Jeez.
So it was a pretty big event here in this area.
So were you on a floodplain then, and that's something that you kind of knew as a risk going into, or?
I did not know that that property was on a floodplain. I'm almost a mile from the river, but just it's in kind of in a flat area. And once that river hit a certain point, it engulfed the almost a lot of the city.
So when that flood happened in your rental, did you have a separate flood insurance, or how did that work as far as like getting your recouping your investment?
I had no flood insurance, and I think because of the big scope of the flood, the city knew that they had to do something for landlords in order to keep some kind of rental housing for low income.
Hmm.
So what they did is they came out with a forgivable loan program, and I think you could get up to like $25,000. And so I applied for those loans, and I got them. And then I also went to the bank and borrowed money.
Was that like an interest-free loan, or was that just like, hey, this is a natural disaster, this is yours?
It was a forgivable loan. We didn't have to pay the money back or interest on the loan.
Okay.
But in return, we had to provide the city with low income housing. So we had to be registered with the city, and you had to meet certain guidelines on how much you could charge for rent,
Okay.
and things of that nature.
So if another landlord maybe was gonna, they see this crazy storm coming through, the word about flooding, like catastrophe type thing, there might be an opportunity where, the local government kind of steps in and has some sort of program. I'm sure it's different
The,
in every city, but that's pretty cool that that
yeah,
happened where you guys are.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of it. If it had just been, an isolated few cases,
Hmm.
of rental properties getting flooded, I don't think that would have happened.
Hmm.
But since the magnitude of this disaster that came through Cedar Rapids, I think was what, they knew they had to do something to
Yeah.
keep some kind of housing for the
Yeah.
landlord community.
Yeah, because it's not just the landlord; it's also the people that are displaced that live in those
Right,
areas.
right.
What did you do as far as like, I mean, first steps with insurance? I mean, you went through this. Like, what was the first steps that you took? Like, how did you handle it?
Um, since there was no insurance, and after it took the city several months to come out with this program. So I mean, I immediately I hired some people to gut the house, because I had about 6 feet of water
Wow.
on the main floor. It was pretty bad. Everything was destroyed. There was nothing salvageable. So I hired a couple guys to come in and do the demo work, where they ripped out all the walls, all the flooring, I mean everything. They just demoed everything on the first floor.
Okay.
In the meantime, I had already gone to the bank to borrow the money to fix this property up. While I had already begun that process, it was several months later that the city came out with the program for the landlords.
Okay.
So, it was nice for them to have that backup there.
Yep. Was there any difficulty finding contractors? Because I'd imagine that they were probably not enough demand for how many homes have been damaged. Like, how'd you deal with that?
Well, I think that was my biggest problem with this whole process, is because I think of myself as a pretty handy guy.
Hmm.
I can fix pretty much everything and anything having to do with a house. And I decided that I was going to tackle this project on my own. And I think that that was one of my biggest mistakes,
Okay.
because it ended up taking me 4.5 years to rebuild this property. And all the while I'm losing rent, I'm having to pay the mortgage and
Hmm.
the insurance and all this stuff. But so I think that was one of the biggest lessons I learned from the whole thing, is I should never have tried to tackle that project myself, all the while trying to work full time,
Yeah.
be a husband, be a father. It didn't work out very well.
Yeah, I'm kind of I'm a landlord myself, and I've definitely fallen into that trap where like I don't want to, pay anybody to do anything. I think it's just kind of the
Exact.
way I was raised. Like, no, you can
Yeah.
do it. Like, you don't need somebody else to do that. But at a certain point, if you're losing all that money on the rental,
Yeah.
it makes more sense to get somebody in there that can kind of fix it up real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I, I I probably lost more money on rent than what I saved, doing it myself.
hmm.
So that was the lesson learned there.
Yeah. Are there any other lessons you learned just from going through the experience if somebody else is, worried about having to go through this soon or in the middle of this? Like anything you would, let them know?
Just keep at it. Keep your head up. You'll get through it. Life goes on, and it's just another stepping stone to overcome challenges.
Yeah, I think that's good advice for, for any difficulties people are kind of going through in
Yeah.
life. So, yeah, I appreciate your time today and getting your feedback from somebody who's gone through, such a bad situation with a rental property. And yeah, like Derek said, just get through it, keep your head up, you'll get through the other
Yep.
side. So, all right,
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Yep, no problem.